I married my same-age partner, Joseph, 3 years ago. However, he changed completely after we got married. He started bossing me around and invited his sister Nancy over to our house, fawning over her and saying how cute she was. He did whatever he wanted. After his parents passed away, Joseph suddenly said to me, "I'm going to marry Nancy, so let's get a divorce." Lately, he hadn't been inviting Nancy over because they were meeting outside. I felt a surge of anger and disappointment, but I kept calm and said, "Okay." On moving day, Joseph saw me and sneered. "You're still here. Hurry up and leave. I'll be gone in a minute." As I was loading my stuff into the car, Joseph and Nancy rushed over and asked, looking puzzled, "Hey, why are you taking the furniture without asking?" "Yeah, it's not yours." I calmly replied, "Well, everything is mine." "What this is?" Joseph and Nancy were wide-eyed. "You both have underestimated me for too long. Now, I'm going to give you a big surprise. Get ready. I am Barbara, a 42-year-old housewife. I've been married to Joseph, whom I met through work, for 5 years. We don't have kids, nor do we plan to. Because of an illness I had in the past, I can't have children. When I told Joseph before our marriage, he just said, "Oh," with indifference. My in-laws never blamed me for it, and I was very grateful for that. Joseph and I grew close while working on a joint project for our affiliated companies. His confidence and assertiveness seemed attractive to me. Eventually, Joseph confessed his feelings, and we started dating. I had been too focused on work to maintain long-term relationships, but I was happy that Joseph understood my job. He proposed after a year of dating, and we got married. However, our happy life didn't last long. Joseph turned out to be quite moody. As the only son of wealthy parents, he was pampered since childhood. As soon as we started living together, he changed completely. He would flaunt his busy schedule and demand, "Make sure I'm always in a good mood. Hi, I'm home. Hey, is dinner not ready yet?" He glared at me as I stood in the kitchen. "Sorry, I just got home too." While I hurriedly stir-fried, Joseph shouted, "I get cranky when I'm hungry. Have dinner ready within 5 minutes of me getting home." "But you don't like pre-made meals, right? Please wait a bit longer." The only way to deal with him was to ignore his outbursts, as his mood would improve once he ate. Joseph was always self-centered. He didn't care if I was bedridden. "Where's my dinner?" He said this while I was lying in bed, having taken the day off work. "Heat up last night's dinner in the microwave." "What? You're making me eat the same thing as yesterday? That's just lazy." Joseph shouted, veins bulging on his forehead, and I rasped out, "I really can't stand in the kitchen. I'm too sick." "I don't care. Can't you take care of your own health?" "I'm sorry. I'll try to get better as soon as I can," I weakly replied, and Joseph's face turned red with anger. "Are you even a wife?" Nancy said she would take care of me even if she was sick. Be more like Nancy. Oh, here we go again. Nancy is my sister, 3 years older than me. She was married once, but is now divorced and single. I invited Nancy over this weekend again, so learn how to be pleasant from her. I endured the headache and nausea, pulled the blanket over my head, and cried, "Nancy, Nancy, I've had enough." I hated Joseph, who fawned over my sister, and Nancy, who clung to him sweetly. With her big eyes, fair skin, and charm, Nancy had been the idol of our kindergarten and school since childhood. "Daddy, I'm sorry I tried, but I couldn't remember." Nancy would wriggle, and our parents would look at her with adoration. "It's okay. Nancy is cute, so it doesn't matter if she can't study." "That's right. Everyone loves her, so it's fine." No matter how poorly she did on tests or how much she broke our parents' prized possessions, they would just forgive her with a smile. Since childhood, I felt my parents' attention was only on my sister, so I worked hard in both academics and sports. But no matter how many awards I received or if I ranked first in my grade, I was never praised or acknowledged. You're ugly, so you have to work hard at studying to get by in this world. Poor thing. Nancy didn't like my plain looks and honest student status and would often harass and insult me. But even if I complained to my parents, they wouldn't believe me, deepening my distrust in them. One day, a decisive event happened. My first boyfriend was stolen by Nancy. Fed up, I left home to attend college and started living alone with the money I had saved from part-time jobs. I became estranged from my parents and Nancy, and finally experienced peaceful days. However, when I got engaged to Joseph and brought him to my parents' house, there was Nancy, all dressed up. Nice to meet you. I'm Nancy, Barbara's sister. Wow, Joseph, you're so handsome and a manager at a big company. My sister's lucky. No, you don't look like Barbara at all. I was surprised at how beautiful you are. My parents thought they were just exchanging pleasantries, but I had a bad feeling about it. And it turned out my intuition was right. The 5-bedroom house Joseph and I live in was built for us by his parents. They gave us the land they owned, and my father-in-law had the house built in his name. Additionally, as a wedding gift, my father-in-law gave us antique furniture he collected as a hobby, making our living room elegant and calm. However, when Nancy's sugary voice echoed, the atmosphere immediately became cheap. Nancy had no shame about draping herself over Joseph and clinging to him right in front of me, making things even worse. As I was made to prepare snacks and meals, I always felt like I was watching a club hostess entertaining a customer. Nancy would pour drinks for Joseph, lavishly praise him, agree with his ridiculous statements, and show exaggerated sympathy. I understand, Joseph. Really, you're amazing, Nancy. Nancy would gently pat Joseph's head and smile. You always work so hard. Good job. Yeah, I'm exhausted every day. My boss is useless. My subordinates are incompetent. Even my colleagues try to hold back someone as talented as me. The company is full of enemies. While gently stroking Joseph's hair as he lay on her lap, Nancy would turn to me. Barbara, are you taking care of Joseph? You need to pamper him more. No way. I can't rely on her. I only want to lean on and be comforted by you, Nancy. Joseph said this sweetly. Barbara doesn't care about me, even when I'm exhausted. Complaining with a pained expression, Joseph ignored the fact that he didn't care about me when I was sick. It's a wife's job to make her husband feel good, but she only thinks about herself. That's not good, Barbara. If the home isn't comfortable, your husband will stop coming back. Nancy pouted and criticized me. That's right, Barbara. If things stay like this, I'll find another woman and leave. You wouldn't want that after finally marrying me, right? Joseph got carried away and said arrogantly, If you don't want Joseph, I'll take him. Just kidding. I'd love for you to take me, Nancy. Even with alcohol involved, I found it abnormal that these conversations happened every week. The next morning, when Joseph was sober, I confronted him angrily. Joseph, I've told you before, stop having personal interactions with my sister. We have a group chat for that. What? We're family. It's fine. Do I need to show you our private conversations? Joseph responded, annoyed. It's weird for you to have personal conversations with my sister. Stop making a fuss over minor things. It's embarrassing to be jealous at your age. No matter how many times I told him I didn't like it, Joseph always dismissed my concerns. Moreover, after meeting Nancy, he would constantly compare me to her. Nancy is fair-skinned, petite, and has a cute voice. She's so different from you. Are you really sisters? She's short and has small feminine hands. If you were like that, you'd be cuter. Being criticized for things I couldn't change made me feel incredibly miserable. I often thought about getting a divorce, but then I would think of my in-laws. They accepted me, especially since I was estranged from my own parents, and they were very kind to me. Joseph hated visiting his parents during holidays, so I would go alone, help them out, and visit them as often as I could. Sorry for always asking you to help. No problem, I'm taller than you, so it's easier for me. In times like this, being tall is useful. When I smiled at my apologetic in-laws, they would also smile. Barbara, you're diligent and thoughtful. Joseph is lucky to have you. We're glad you married him. Helping with their shopping, changing light bulbs, or weeding the garden always brought genuine joy to my in-laws. If I divorced Joseph, I would lose my connection with them. This thought made it hard for me to go through with a divorce. However, while I was hesitating, an unexpected event occurred. My in-laws both fell ill and passed away. My father-in-law died of acute heart failure, and my mother-in-law had terminal cancer. I took caregiving leave and brought my mother-in-law to our home to take care of her until she passed away 6 months after being given a terminal diagnosis. Nancy didn't show up at our house during this time, probably because Joseph had told her about the situation. I was relieved about that, but Joseph's attitude was unbearable. He showed no concern for his suffering mother and behaved as if it was someone else's problem. Joseph, your mother is in pain. Can you sit with her and talk to her sometimes? Joseph, who barely saw his mother and would lock himself in his room after coming home, frowned in annoyance. What? Why me? I have work tomorrow and I'm busy. But caring for a mother-in-law is the wife's job. It's not my concern. His cold words made my blood boil. Can't you at least come home a little earlier? Every night, weekdays and weekends, you're out drinking, playing golf, or going for drives. It's part of my social obligations. Social obligations, my foot. He just didn't want to take care of his mother and pushed the responsibility onto me. Or maybe he's having an affair. I briefly suspected it, but then dismissed the idea as too outrageous. 6 months later, after a long battle with illness, my mother-in-law passed away. I cried all night, and with swollen eyes, I prepared for the funeral. Beside me, Joseph was calmly contacting the family temple. Come to think of it, he was also indifferent when his father passed away, while I and the relatives sobbed. Joseph efficiently handled his duties as the chief mourner, even smirking at his phone during the funeral. After the 49-day memorial for his parents, I finally had time to process everything. One evening after work, Joseph suddenly said, "I'm tired of you. I'm going to marry Nancy, so let's get a divorce." I was speechless. As I stared at Joseph, it all made sense. Nancy hadn't been avoiding our house out of consideration. She had been meeting Joseph outside. I was boiling with rage at Joseph's smirk. He was a failure both as a son and a husband. My feelings for Joseph had completely cooled, so I sighed and murmured, "Okay. Get out of this house too. A 5-bedroom house is too big for just one person, right?" I was appalled by his selfishness, but decided to comply quietly. "You're right, but it'll take some time to find a new place. Can you give me 2 weeks? "Fine. Thank you. I appreciate it." I smiled at Joseph and immediately started looking for an apartment. At the same time, I began preparing for the divorce. 2 weeks later, the day finally arrived. As I was packing a suitcase with essentials for the move, Nancy arrived. "Oh, this house is really lovely. It's so spacious, and all these antique pieces make it so stylish." Nancy looked around the living room as if it were hers, then ran to the dresser, caressing it with her manicured hands. "This will all be mine soon." Ignoring her, I continued my work. Nancy then came over and asked, "Barbara, have you driven Joseph's new car yet?" "The bright red sports car. I have no interest in driving something that gaudy." "You weren't allowed to ride in it, right? Because you dirty it." She gave me a wicked smile. "Did you know it cost 50 grand? That's what you get for being a manager at a big company." I glanced sideways at Nancy. "What?" Ignorance is really sad, isn't it? "What?" As we were having this conversation, the moving truck arrived at the gate. I guided the staff inside and pointed out the items to be moved. Then Joseph, in his pajamas, came down the stairs and sneered at me. "You're still here. Hurry up and leave." "I'll be gone in a minute." After giving all the instructions, I carried the lighter items I would need immediately to my car in the parking lot. Then I heard Joseph and Nancy's panicked voices. "Hey, why are you taking the furniture without asking?" "Yeah, the cabinet and dresser aren't yours, Barbara." No wonder they were upset. The movers were covering the antique furniture with blue cloths and loading it onto the truck. "Hey, give proper instructions." As I was putting boxes into the storage unit, Joseph and Nancy came rushing over, looking frantic. I calmly replied, "Oh, it's all mine." "What this is?" "To be precise, they are heirlooms I inherited from my father-in-law." As Joseph and Nancy stared in shock, I smiled confidently. "Both of you have underestimated me for too long. Now, I'm going to give you a big surprise. Get ready." Closing the storage unit door, I turned to Joseph and Nancy and spoke with a smile. "Joseph, don't you remember, after the funeral, the lawyer asked us to stay behind? He had something important to discuss." Joseph's face suddenly looked alarmed. "You left right after the funeral. Did you have a date with my sister?" Joseph exchanged a glance with Nancy. "Yeah, I had planned a trip to a hot spring with Nancy." "What?" "Remember, we went on an overnight trip the day of Mom's funeral." I was slightly surprised that Nancy knew about it. Then Nancy pouted and complained. I had plans first. Joseph's mom had terrible timing. "Really?" Ignoring my shock, she continued to grumble. "We'd been looking forward to this trip for 3 months, and it was ruined." It's understandable that she passed away, but it left a bad taste. It's like our happy memories were tainted. I was speechless. I felt a chill realizing how cold my own sister could be. Not only did they boldly go on an affair trip on the day of the funeral, but they also spoke so callously about the death of a loved one. And the fact that Joseph didn't see anything wrong with it. What kind of people are they? "So, what did the lawyer say?" "It was about your parents' inheritance." Joseph fell silent for a moment, then widened his eyes and clutched his head, shouting, "I haven't heard anything from the lawyer, so the discussion already happened. Damn it." After the monk left, the relatives gathered to talk. Ignoring Joseph's frustration, I continued. "Your father wrote a will before he collapsed from heart failure and entrusted it to your mother. He stated that all the antique furniture in this house should be given to me." "What?" Joseph frowned. "I often visited your parents and chatted with them, remember?" "Yeah, I remember." "I love French furniture and often talked about flea markets. Your father was happy that we shared similar interests. He had always wanted to give the furniture to me, and he told your mother that." "What? No way. Why you, Barbara?" Nancy pouted, her cheeks puffed out, next to Joseph's scowl. "Yeah, even if selling them was a hassle. Why you don't even know how to take care of them properly." "So, do you know how to take care of the furniture, Joseph?" I asked, testing him. Joseph leaned back and answered confidently. "Of course. You polish it every day with olive oil. It's good for your body, so it's definitely good for the furniture. Foreign furniture needs foreign oil, right?" I couldn't help but burst out laughing at his nonsensical theory. But Nancy's eyes lit up, and she clapped, showering him with praise as usual. Wow, Joseph, you know so much. See, I'm right, aren't I? Wrong, you just need to wipe it with a dry cloth. Joseph looked disappointed at the correct answer. That's so simple. That's why your dad didn't ask you to take care of it. You'd ruin such beautiful furniture. I threw a jab at Joseph, and Nancy looked annoyed. Joseph doesn't know everything. It's stupid to brag over something so trivial. She glared at me and snapped. The built-in cabinets and closets stay, and you're leaving the washer and fridge, right? Just buy more antique furniture. Right, Joseph. Joseph's face twitched for some reason. Yeah, that's right. Nancy didn't notice Joseph's discomfort and continued with her haughty attitude. Barbara, do you think you've won just because you got the furniture? Too bad. I'm better than you because I'm getting Joseph and this house. Yeah, whatever you say. I responded dismissively, and Nancy glanced sideways at Joseph. Joseph fell in love with me at first sight during our pre-wedding meeting, right? Yeah, Nancy is cute and looks like she's in her 30s. Grinning, Joseph wrapped his arm around Nancy's waist and pulled her close. Nancy gave a malicious smile. Remember when we met Barbara's boyfriend? He ended up liking me too. Oh, that happened. I can understand how he felt. Right, sorry for stealing my sister's boyfriend, but it's Barbara's fault. Or maybe I'm just too cute. Nancy's sugary voice made me roll my eyes and laugh. Sure, go ahead and say that after you seduced him with your revealing outfits and flirty touches. But once she had him, she got bored and dumped him within a month. Realizing that a big fight would be troublesome, Joseph tried to defuse the situation. He smiled at Nancy and urged her to go inside. Nancy, let's leave her alone and go into our new home. Tonight, we should have a welcome party for you. Really, you're doing that for me, Joseph. You're so sweet. Nancy's eyes sparkled, and Joseph looked pleased with himself. I'd do anything for you, Nancy. Should I order sushi from a famous restaurant, or maybe book a high-end Italian place? Whatever you want, Joseph. I'm happy just being with you. Nancy hugged Joseph tightly, responding in a childish voice. Their exchange of cheesy lines, like something out of a bad romance comic, made me laugh more than anything. It was like a comedy sketch. They acted as if their affair was a pure love story, completely shameless. And this from two people well into their 40s, not teenagers. So, get lost, will you? Here are the divorce papers. Get them filed quickly. Barbara. All right, but wait a moment, I'm expecting someone. When I said that, Joseph and Nancy looked puzzled. Basically, I was stalling for time. I didn't want to invite these two to my new place, so I wanted to settle everything here. Here they are. I smiled to a man in a suit coming down the hallway, and he smiled back politely. Joseph and Nancy looked curiously at the man approaching the parking lot. Hello, thank you for coming. This is our lawyer. Oh, Joseph said. I saw you at the funeral the other day. Yes, your parents were very kind to me. Thank you, so what brings you here today? The lawyer asked, slightly confused Joseph. From what Barbara told me, Joseph and Nancy, you're moving into this house starting today, correct? Yes, that's right. Nancy answered cheerfully. The lawyer kept his professional smile and said to Joseph and Nancy, Barbara has been entrusted with selling this house. I'm sorry, but you both need to vacate by next week. Joseph and Nancy were stunned. What? Joseph, didn't your mom tell you anything? Oh, that's right. You prioritized dates over visiting your parents, even though they called you many times. I said loudly on purpose. and Joseph looked embarrassed, avoiding eye contact with the lawyer. I glanced at Nancy and continued. This land was given to us by Joseph's parents when we got married, right? And the house was built under his father's name. They paid the full amount, so we didn't need a mortgage. Yeah, that's right. Because of their generosity, I helped with hospital preparations, visited them, and cared for my mother-in-law during her final months. Meanwhile, Joseph was busy having an affair with Nancy. After father-in-law passed away, mother-in-law transferred the land and house to my name. What? Joseph's eyes widened, and he shouted. I never heard about this. Ignoring their own son. What the hell? Exactly, oh, I get it. Nancy clapped her hands and approached the lawyer, claiming in a high-pitched voice. Lawyer, Joseph's parents were tricked by Barbara. She's cunning. Or maybe his parents were senile. That's the only explanation. Yeah, it should rightfully be mine. It's ridiculous that she gets it. But the lawyer, likely accustomed to disputes over inheritance, replied calmly, I'm sorry, but there are no issues with the will. Thank you, lawyer. We'll handle the rest ourselves. I interrupted. Dealing with these two would get us nowhere. All right, thank you. After seeing the lawyer off, I turned to Joseph and said, Your parents often said, Joseph never called us, even when we were injured or sick. He never paid back the money he borrowed. He was as cold as if he weren't an only child. Joseph's face twitched, clearly hit by the truth. That's not true. They said they were so happy when I came to chat with them. I continued with a smile. But isn't that too cold? The saying that rich people are stingy is true. Joseph couldn't let it go and kept complaining. That's not the point. Anyway, according to your parents, they didn't intend to leave you a single cent. They even cancelled the insurance. Joseph froze. No way. Even the insurance. What? This messes up everything. Nancy protested angrily, and Joseph frowned at her. Even you, Nancy. Oh no, nothing. Nancy hastily tried to cover up. To explain on her behalf, I took out some documents and photos from the file I was holding and showed them to Joseph and Nancy. Nancy's face instantly turned pale. You have a 2 million yen debt from these payments, don't you? You plan to marry Joseph and use him to get money, right? What? What's this? Joseph snatched the documents from my hand and stared at them intently. As he read, his expression changed and he began to grumble. What? You forbade me from going to hostess bars and girls' bars, but you were visiting host clubs. That's unfair. Wait a minute. When he saw the photos, his face contorted in anger. Nancy, you were cheating with a host. It wasn't cheating. I was just supporting his work. What's wrong with giving money to someone in need? Nancy hastily defended herself. He's going to be number one. He needs to wear better clothes, drive a cool car, and wear a watch worth over $10,000. I have to support him to make that happen. Joseph suddenly tilted his head and muttered to himself. Wait a minute. Is that why you recommended expensive watches and cars to me? I thought it was your preference and bought a car on a loan. Joseph, enraged, was laughed at by Nancy, who curled her lips. I recommended them to him, so I needed to know how they felt. Besides, I'm disappointed in you. Pointing her finger at Joseph, Nancy's face filled with anger as she hurled insults. I thought you'd be a good money source since you were the son of a famous wealthy family. But to lose the house and the expensive furniture to Barbara, you're pathetic. Gone was her faux innocence, replaced by raw anger. This woman planned to take money from me and spend it on a host. She's worthless despite her cute face. As Joseph raged, I sneered at him. Joseph, you intended to sell this house, the land and the furniture to pay off your debts and cover your living expenses, didn't you? Too bad. You pushed the hospital visits and caregiving onto me, but wanted to take all the rewards. It doesn't work that way. Nancy then asked curiously, Joseph, aren't you a manager at a big company? You should be fine without any inheritance. That was his title 6 months ago. Joseph's eyes widened in shock. Barbara, how do you know that? He started to say, but then fell silent, covering his mouth with his hand. I grinned and pulled out another set of documents from the file, showing them to Nancy. Her eyes widened almost comically, and a low voice emerged from her red lips. Joseph Smith was forced to resign 6 months ago due to harassment complaints from multiple female employees. Since then, he hasn't worked, living off his wife's salary, and now he has over $10,000 in debt from his continued spending. I was surprised too. I nodded deeply at Nancy, who was trembling with anger. Every morning, he dressed in a suit and left at the usual time, so I was completely fooled. The living expenses and allowances, which were supposed to come from our mutual salaries, were secretly taken from our joint savings. Nancy crumpled the documents in her hand and shouted at Joseph. You've got to be kidding me. A poor man like you shouldn't be cheating. Look who's talking. You're the one who seduced me. Joseph shouted back, not backing down. It's your fault for taking the bait. Damn it, I've wasted a whole year. As they continued their screaming match, I interrupted them with a cold tone. It looks like the movers are done, so I'll be going now. I need to sell this house as soon as possible, so please move out by the weekend. With that, I got into my car. I watched them bicker in the rearview mirror as I left, leading the moving truck to my new apartment. I later heard that Joseph and Nancy had such a big fight that the neighbors called the police because of the noise. Even after being reprimanded and going back inside, they argued until dawn. Once the move was complete, I immediately went to the city office to file for divorce. The next day, during my lunch break at work, I checked my phone and saw 30 missed calls from Joseph. I saw the messages piling up, so I decided to call him back to avoid further hassle. Barbara, did you already submit the divorce papers? Yes, why? Let's start over. Joseph made a ridiculous proposal. I was wrong. Nancy came onto me, and I got carried away. I realized you're better than a woman pretending to be young. He spewed excuses rapidly. It was only a year, so please forgive me. Only a year? That's a third of our marriage. How dare you? I shouted, but Joseph pleaded in a pitiful voice. When I moved into the apartment, my savings ran out. I tried borrowing from relatives, but they turned me away. How am I supposed to live without a job? Find a job yourself. You should have been job hunting while we were together. I was too busy having fun with Nancy to have time for that. Joseph finally broke down in tears. I have credit card debt too, so I can't pay you alimony. You'll pay it in installments if necessary. And the joint savings too, from now on, communicate through my lawyer. I firmly said my piece and hung up the phone. A few days later, the lawyer informed me that Joseph had gotten a part-time job. Through the lawyer, we agreed that Joseph would pay the $20,000 alimony in installments of $300 per month, plus the $10,000 from our joint savings. If he missed a payment, his wages would be garnished immediately, so he had to work hard from morning to night. Of course, I also sent a certified letter to Nancy at her parents' house, demanding alimony. Nancy's parents, who had let her live leisurely without much work, were furious when they found out about her affair with Joseph. They kicked her out and cut all ties with her. Nancy moved into a run-down apartment and reluctantly started working. Like Joseph, she had to pay alimony of $500 per month, with similar measures in place if she missed a payment. Having never held a proper job, Nancy quickly became disliked due to her inappropriate behavior. She worked while nearly in tears, often getting snide remarks from her younger shift leader. Her parents vented their frustrations to me. Nancy is a laughingstock among our relatives for stealing her sister's husband. We never thought she was like this, Barbara. You're our only hope now, so you'll come back to take care of us, right? I refuse. Please find a care facility. I replied curtly, ended the call, and blocked their contact. Returning to a single life made me realize how much I had been enduring. I felt the full extent of the stress I had accumulated while being tossed around by Joseph. However, one silver lining of this ordeal is that I was able to cut ties with Nancy. The antique furniture I inherited from my in-laws perfectly fits the atmosphere of my new place, and I cherish using it. Also, the house was in such good condition that it sold quickly. Now, a family of 4 with a big dog lives there. I plan to save the proceeds from the sale for my retirement. While my marriage ended in failure, I am grateful to have met my in-laws. From now on, I plan to live the rest of my life meaningfully, keeping the memories of my in-laws close to my heart.